It's completely idiotic. If you start pulling the party apart, as you're meant to be planning an election campaign, as you're meant to be trying to find whatever comfort there is in some better economic news, some hope for this, a few scraps of good information to try to ward off a catastrophic defeat, the last thing you need is mutiny in the ranks, and particularly when they're not offering anything really significantly different that would be appealing to the general public.
We are keeping an eye, by the way, on Sir Simon Clarke and our colleague Harry Clarke, the political editor at The Sun, and his reporting. He did initially report a Tory onslaught. Number 10 braced for leadership. I haven't seen evidence of the onslaught yet, to be fair, but he has confirmed that Sir Simon Clarke is calling for a new Prime Minister tonight. Sir Simon Clarke, of course, former Levelling Up Secretary, one of those big opponents on the Rwanda bill, and someone who voted, one of the Tory rebels, one of the 11 who voted against it. Number 10 has issued a statement and has told Harry Cole this is a self-indulgent attempt to undermine the government at a critical moment for the country. And writing in the Telegraph this evening, this has just dropped, by the way, Sir Simon Clarke has written, amongst other things, the unvarnished truth is that Rishi Sunak is leading the Conservatives into an election where we will be massacred. It's beyond doubt, he says, that whilst the Prime Minister is far from solely responsible for our present predicament, his uninspiring leadership is the main obstacle to our recovery. Samantha, let me just bring in you on this as a big political watcher, I know. Tell us what this means. Is this the beginning of the end? Is this Sir Simon Clarke just simply wanting to make his point, as someone like Sir David Frost has done as well? Where does this stand, do you think, within the context of what's going on in the Conservative Party and Rishi Sunak's strength of leadership?
I think it's absolutely right that, I'm not really agreeing with the government on much of what they're doing at the moment, but I do think the statement they put out calling it a self-indulgent attempt at undermining the government is entirely correct. All it reminds me of, it harks back to the days of Nadine Dorries when she was trying everything in her power to undermine the premiership of Rishi Sunak, of Liz Truss, of anyone who wasn't Boris Johnson. I think that the Conservatives sense that they are heading for a mammoth election defeat. They can tell that their days in power are numbered, and so they're tearing themselves apart from the inside. But the last thing that this country needs, and that the Conservative Party needs, and that anyone needs really, is another mutiny, is another palace coup. We've seen so much instability from the Conservatives that their reputation on being a strong and stable lead, to hark back to the days of Theresa May, couldn't get much worse. And so for Sir Simon Clarke to now be at a critical time for our economy, for when there's major action going on in the Red Sea, when there are so many other issues that the government should be firefighting and is firefighting, to then face yet more scrutiny from within their own ranks, it reminds me again of prior to Rishi Sunak taking office, and also when Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party were doing this whole infighting rigmarole. It seems as though they just can't get their act together long enough to make any real decisions, and Sir Simon Clarke is only helping to make the Conservative reputation worse.
Nadine Dorries has tweeted that Simon Clarke is a decent and brave man in response to these lines from Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor. He's just actually clarified it's a senior Tory spokesperson who gave him that quote on this as a self-indulgent attempt to undermine the government at a critical moment for the country, in response for Sir Simon Clarke calling for a new Prime Minister tonight. I mean, this is it. This is the plot, isn't it? This is David Cameron, next leader of the party, if we're to follow Dorries' next book plot. Maybe it isn't such a fantasy. Michael, what does this mean in the wider context, do you think, for the Conservative Party? You will have seen over the years plenty of political leaders, plenty of prime ministers challenged in this way. We're close to a general election in the bigger context of things. Could be 8, 9, 10 months away, but still relatively close. We're in the build-up to it. And yet here you have senior Conservatives already outspoken on some issues who do not want to wind their neck in.
Absolutely laughable. I think it's completely idiotic. If you start pulling the party apart, as you're meant to be planning an election campaign, as you're meant to be trying to find whatever comfort there is in some better economic news, some hope for this, a few scraps of good information to try to ward off a catastrophic defeat, The last thing you need is mutiny in the ranks, and particularly when they're not offering anything really significantly different that would be appealing to the general public. I mean, as far as I can make out, they're offering a sort of more right-wing agenda. Well, is that what the country needs? No, I would say the very opposite. When you look at where the polls are going, it doesn't want that. And to try to get the old incorrigibles all together, banding up, you know, the Boris cheerers, and say, we must dump Sunak, he's no good. Well, there's no time to do so, and who on earth would they put in his place?
Writing in The Sun, Harry Cole reports that Sir Simon said it was devastatingly obvious the Tories are heading for defeat. A leading rebellion organiser has also spoken to Harry Cole, said the polling shows that Sunak's a drag on the party and that another Conservative leader could quite easily turn the tide against Starmer, who is also a dud, they say. But in Sir Simon Clarke's piece for The Telegraph, he talks about being not being naive over polls, and even that big polling, the YouGov polling that featured in The Telegraph a week or so ago,